My name's Greg Seneff. I was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky. I had a wonderful family, but they were very different in the way that my parents were raised. My mother was raised in a very formal, strict Southern Baptist home, and my father was actually raised in a home where his father owned all the vices in the area. He ran the pool hall, the poker games, pinball machines, taverns, and so that was the way my father was raised. And he came from a broken home and worked for my grandfather quite a lot, so they were together all the time. My parents moved to Louisville, Kentucky after they were married, and I was born there and raised there. And we did have a Christian home. My mother was the motivator to get us to church every Sunday morning. And my dad certainly went. He was moved by messages and would get choked up sometimes when something really touched him. But he was not the person that read the Bible stories to us. But we had a wonderful family life and did a lot of things together as a family. I wound up accepting Jesus in 7th grade, and that changed a lot of things for me. I became very involved in youth group and met a lot of people that way, and really felt like I was called to the ministry, and wound up going to college thinking that I was going to be a pastor. Got involved in the music industry, and that's how I wound up moving to Nashville. And my parents went right along all those years, and in 1999, my mother called me to tell me that she had discovered my father had been involved in a series of extramarital affairs. And of course that was very upsetting because we felt like we had a wonderful family. My brother and I got to sit down and talk with my father, and had a heart-to-heart with him, and he was very sad. And he talked about how the way he was raised, he did not associate sexual relationships with love. And that was a disconnect for him that had run through his entire life. And he did not want to divorce my mother. He wanted to reconcile with her and was willing to do whatever it took to get back with my mother. And the both of them went to a number of pastoral counseling groups. They were with pastor counseling, marital counseling. My father asked if there was deliverance ministry at my church here in Nashville, and there was, and he came down. So I wound up getting to baptize my father. He became a Christian. He thought he was a Christian because he went to church. And so that was a wonderful thing. I know my father was fully forgiven. I asked him several times, do you want me to share your testimony, and if so, how much? And he said, all of it. That's my testimony. He was not afraid of the ugly parts coming out because he knew that that's the ugliness that Christ forgives. And so in 2005, my parents celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and we went to that, and it was a wonderful time. And in 2007, my mother was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And she went through some horrible times health-wise, and he would stay all day, he would take care of her, he would feed her, he would help change her when she needed it, all the things that you have to do, and then he would go home and vacuum the house and clean dishes and do the laundry and go to bed and get up the next morning and do it the same thing every day for months. And in 2007, he wound up having to have emergency surgery, and through that he became septic and went through respiratory failure and actually passed away. And we were very blessed to be by his bedside. Both my younger brother and my mother and I were sitting there, and the chaplain, who was marvelous, walked up to my mother after a few minutes of us grieving and said, well, Roberta, tell me about some stories about Vance. And she thought for a second and said, I can't think of any stories right now. But in the past 2 years, he proved to me he loved me. So for me, that's a story of forgiveness and reconciliation. So if I can speak to someone today about the lesson that I learned and how it can be applied to my own life and other people's lives, is that Jesus can overcome anything. We have situations in our lives where it feels like the ultimate trust has been broken. But I know through my own experience that Jesus can overcome that, and Jesus can forgive that person and work forgiveness between different relationships. So I would encourage you to look toward Jesus for forgiveness. He can accomplish that.